Have you ever heard of secondary losses? What about primary losses? Well, grief and loss is huge. And if you have suffered the death of a loved one or a significant other or a major move, for example, or a major breakup that has rocked your world, then that would be called the primary loss that you're dealing with right now or have been dealing with. Secondary losses are ones that happen as a result of that primary that may not always be noticeable or may not always be as obvious that that's another loss, but they are another loss and they're very important and they need to be worked through, and you need to get help, and you need to recognize those losses and acknowledge those losses and then get help and support for each and every one of them if possible, because every one of them are important. As a result of a primary loss, but now you add on secondary losses that happen as a result, it's like a domino effect. One goes down, and now how many others are going to go down with it that are lined up, right? Some maybe experience a lot, some only a little, but usually there's always secondary losses as a result of a primary loss. And not that you may not already be feeling this with the primary loss, but you add on these secondaries, you can even feel more overwhelmed, because y'all know I love to sign, overwhelmed, more disoriented, and even more isolated or alone possibly because of that. So I'm Julie Kay, helping you find your way through grief and loss and find your way to better mental health. That's my hopes that my videos do that, and I love coaching one-on-one women so that I can help them with mental health, because I got to help myself with mental health. I'm back in counseling actually right now for one of the things that I still want to fully work through, because I don't want it to be, I want to be totally at peace in that area of my heart and life due to some of my secondary losses. So, and I've had coaching in the past. So there's nothing wrong with you doing it too. And there's nothing wrong with a person who's helping others to get help themselves. In fact, I strongly encourage it, because all the more you're going to be effective for others, and you're not going to just be helping others, but you're going to be helping yourself have health and well-being and soundness of mind and peace, and have all your relationships be blessed, right? So that's what I want to talk about briefly today, is secondary losses. I did bring this up in my my presentation last week at PHSC that I gave, and that whole thing is online live on Facebook Live, because I did do a Facebook Live of that presentation. If you want to see and hear more, please go there. I was thankful to hear that some of the attendees really benefited from what I shared and the slides that I shared, etc. So with on top of what I already shared, I want to touch on a few of the losses. Now, there's obvious losses, more obvious losses, like separation between two people, or that can happen as a result of a death. Like, it's a common thing, I hate to say it, like with a child dying, especially like a suicide or a murder, but any child dying, a lot of times couples break up as a result of that, and that's sad. So it could be a separation or divorce loss, or it could be children experiencing losses of a parent. And those are a little more obvious to us, but I want to mention some of the categories and some of the secondary losses that are still very important, that need to be noticed and need our attention, put it that way. Okay, and so I'm just going to list a few of the categories kind of with that, and then some of the losses, just to give you ideas. And then if you think of any other ones on top of this, please let me know. If you have experienced any of these secondary losses, please let me know by commenting, or say you got an aha that you all of a sudden you recognize, wow, that was a loss. I'd love to hear that, because that's huge, because then you can begin to deal with it and honor that loss and honor yourself in that, and be kind and patient with yourself, knowing that that has very much affected your life, right? So one of the categories we could call it is concrete things, such as financial losses, loss of work, that could be work changes, a job change, a job loss, a business that had to be closed down, loss of status because maybe your income dropped tremendously because you had to or you couldn't cope because of your primary loss. Whatever it is, these are just ideas. Safety, a loss of safety, a loss of a home that you had to let go of because of financial issues, etc. So those are just a few more concrete things, losses that can happen. Another one is loss of health, physical or mental. Maybe you so bad that you end up being disabled now. That would be really huge. That's a huge loss. That's a huge change in life that needs to be acknowledged for sure. What about loss of relationship or changes in relationship? Google mentioned you could call this companionship losses, if you want to call it that. Couple examples are friends, relationship with friends that grow distant. A lot of times, friends and family, or even coworkers, whatever, just don't know how to help you, or your loss makes them afraid of their own, or they just don't know how to cope, or they don't know what to do, so they just pull away. That's very common, and that's another loss for you. And I've suffered losses of that sort too. Common, and sometimes they hurt even more. In fact, they usually do, because we either have expectations that that person's going to be there for us, or we're more needy, and so it can hit us even harder. Maybe common ground with that person is lost or changes like that. So relationship definitely changes, usually are almost automatic. It's just a matter how severe it is and how much it affects you, how much it affects me, because loss and grief, just like trauma, is subjective. It's subjective. It's very personal. It's very unique to each and every person, and each and every loss is unique. So that, means we can help one another, but it's important to realize you may feel alone in that, and maybe you don't know anybody else who went through it. Another loss is the loss of a pet. That's huge. I'm working with a man named Greg Swan from Fentanyl Fathers, going out and bringing awareness, and that's part of our therapy, is to go and try to warn other people and try to save lives through fentanyl awareness and education of how the dangers of fentanyl. And yet he just lost a dog that that they had for quite a while, and they purposely got that dog to help them with the loss of their son from years ago. So you lost your son, and you get a pet as part of that, healing and that moving on, and now years later you lose the pet. That sometimes is even more huge. And I don't look forward to that with my kitty. I know other people who, one of the women who attended our grief support group 2 years ago, came primarily about the loss of her dog. And we let her get up and honor her dog in our what do you call it, memorial that we had, kind of a special ceremony we had where everybody got to acknowledge their losses. So that can be really huge. Don't minimize it. Loss of a person who they used to be. So that would be a little more maybe in the case of drug use, or maybe disability, something like, or a stroke or something happened, and you've lost that person, your spouse or your child or family member, your parent. You've lost them as they used to be. They can't maybe talk anymore, or they're on substances, and that's totally altered their personality. So that's another huge loss that can happen that a lot of people don't acknowledge as really affecting you. And it definitely can affect you very hugely. The loss of identity is another one, which could be the loss of a dream. So like spouses go through so much when they lose this, or partners. The one dies and they had all these plans and dreams together, and now what does the person do? So that's just an example that's coming to me. Loss of goals, loss of purpose, a loss of roles, a loss of your role. So you lost your child, maybe, especially if it was your only child, maybe now you don't even feel like you're a parent anymore, or am I a parent anymore? So you go through that identity loss, or maybe even a crisis, identity crisis, loss of identity. It could be with anything. You could lose somebody that you were a caretaker for, that you were with a long time and were very bonded to, and now you don't feel like a caretaker. So with secondary losses, even more a person, you, me, any of us, can even more develop mental health issues, whether they're serious or just temporary. Hopefully they are temporary, but we can even more develop mental health issues, conditions, because of not just the primary loss, but the secondary losses and the compounding effect of that domino effect, all falling down at the same time or close together or anything like that. So even more, if you can identify with this, if you even more identify when you get off this video and you think about it and realize the secondary losses, acknowledge those secondary losses, even more it is needed very often to get support, one-on-one support, group support as in a grief support group or grief share, or that could be through hospice. Our church one, if you know me, we did take a break for the month of June. I had a friend who was involved with the ministry run it for the month of May because Steve and I had needed a break. It was time for us to take a break, but I am going to be going back to it in July. So if you hear this and you know about our Calvary Chapel Worship Center group, we are going to be starting it back up in July and probably not taking too many more breaks with that, hopefully. But anyway, so you're welcome to call me if you are interested in that. That's in downtown Newport Richey, or it's in Newport Richey, period, the church. But, finding group support or one-on-one support through a counselor, therapist, or a coach. I am a life coach, and I do one-on-one in my home right here in this room or online. And I would love to support you and help you because you really need that. All the more if you have had secondary losses that have majorly tripped you up, changed your life, overwhelmed you, caused you to go into depression, caused you to have PTSD even, caused you to be anxious. Oh my goodness, anxiety can definitely increase with multiple losses. So all of these things and more can compound. So all the more you need to know that it's okay, and it is important for you to get support. Find support. Don't do this alone. God didn't make us to do this alone. He didn't design us to do this alone. You look in the scriptures; they mourned together. They got together and they even hired mourners. It was always a community thing. It wasn't just an alone thing. Although we need time alone to deal with stuff too, but we can't do this alone. So please get support. Please reach out to me. I have a free 1-hour complimentary consult with no obligation. We just get on with each other. We find out what your biggest needs are and find out, and I always give at least one tip to help you. And then we find out if it's a fit for us to work together on an ongoing basis or not. So I'm Julie Kay, helping you find your way through grief and loss and through your primary loss and your secondary losses. God bless you until next week. And please work on your mental health. It is so important. And losses definitely affect your mental health. So God bless you. Bye-bye.